Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. His mind raced, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make sense of everything that had happened. The strange woman Lyra had appeared beside him in his bed, claiming to be a guardian sent to protect him. She spoke of aliens, of a war, and of his role in something far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. It felt like a dream, one he couldn't wake up from. But as much as he wanted to dismiss it all as some sort of bizarre fantasy, something deep inside him told him it wasn't a dream. Lyra's presence, the way she had spoken, the strange power she carried, it was all real. The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting a soft glow on the table. Ethan rubbed his eyes, trying to clear the fog from his thoughts. He was just a regular guy. He wasn't a hero. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to live his life, quiet and simple. But now, everything had changed. Lyra sat across from him, her eyes calm, yet filled with purpose. Her calm demeanor only made Ethan more uneasy. He wanted answers. He needed to understand what was happening. "I don't get it," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "Why me? I'm just a guy who works in a tech company. I'm not special. I don't have some secret power." Lyra gave him a soft smile. "You think you're ordinary, Ethan, but that's not the truth. You've always had this power inside you. It's just been waiting to awaken. And now, it's time." Ethan shook his head. "I don't feel powerful. I feel confused, and honestly, a little scared." "I understand," Lyra said, her voice soothing. "But that's part of the process. The power within you isn't just about strength. It's about connection. Connection to the earth, to the energy that flows through everything. You can sense things that others cannot. The Zaroth, the aliens, they will try to manipulate and control people. But you will be able to see them for what they truly are." Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. "So, you're saying I'm like some sort of superhuman?" "In a way," Lyra replied, "but not in the way you might think. You're not invincible, Ethan, but you can tap into the energy of the planet, the force that flows through all living things. It will give you strength when you need it. You can feel it in your bones, in your heart. You'll just have to trust yourself." Ethan wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that he could be more than just a regular guy. But how could he? He didn't feel anything different. He was still the same person he had always been. He sighed, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on him. Lyra stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the peaceful neighborhood beyond. "The Zaroth have already infiltrated key positions across the world," she said. "They've been manipulating humans for years, guiding them into positions of power. They control governments, companies, even entire cities. Their plan is to weaken humanity from within until they can make their final move." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "So they're already here?" "They're among us." "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "They've been hiding in plain sight. Some of them look just like us, but they're not. They're shapeshifters. The real danger is that they can make anyone believe they are human. That's why we can't trust anyone right now. You have to stay alert." Ethan's head spun. The idea of aliens among them, living their lives as ordinary people, was almost impossible to believe. But the more he listened to Lyra, the more it felt like reality. There was no escaping it now. Lyra turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a gentle intensity. "You're going to start training now. I will help you unlock your potential. But you need to be ready. The first attack is coming soon. We don't have much time." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "Training? For what?" "To fight back," she said. "The Zaroth are coming for you. But you are not alone. You have me, and you have your own power. I will help you tap into it. But only if you're willing to fight." Ethan stared at her, unsure of what to say. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want any of this. He just wanted his quiet life back. But deep down, he knew there was no going back. The war Lyra had spoken of was real. The Zaroth were coming, and he had a part to play in it. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll train. But I still don't understand how I'm supposed to fight," Lyra smiled. "It's not just about physical strength. It's about learning to listen, to feel the energy around you. I will teach you how to harness it. You'll start small, but soon you'll be able to do things you never thought possible. For the next several days, Lyra guided Ethan through the basics of his training. They began early in the mornings, before the sun had fully risen, when the world was still quiet. They went into the woods outside the town, away from prying eyes. Lyra taught him to meditate, to focus on his breathing, to clear his mind and connect with the energy around him at first. It was difficult for Ethan. He didn't feel anything. He just felt silly sitting cross-legged on the ground, trying to clear his thoughts. But over time, he started to notice small changes. He began to feel something, an almost imperceptible hum in the air, a warmth that seemed to radiate from the earth itself. It was faint, but it was there. As the days passed, Lyra pushed him harder. She taught him how to control his energy, how to sense the presence of others. One evening, as the sun was setting, Lyra asked him to focus on a single point in the forest. A large rock a few meters away. Concentrate on the rock, she instructed. Feel the energy coming from it. You are not separate from it, Ethan. You are connected to everything around you. Ethan closed his eyes, blocking out everything except for the image of the rock in his mind. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, he began to feel a subtle pull in his chest, like an invisible thread connecting him to the rock. His heartbeat quickened. And then, with a sudden jolt, the rock shifted. It wasn't much, but it moved just a few inches under the force of his focus. He opened his eyes in shock. "I did that?" he whispered, staring at the rock. Lyra nodded, her eyes proud but patient. "Yes. You've begun to unlock your power. This is just the beginning, Ethan." As they continued their training, Ethan grew stronger. He could feel the energy of the earth in his hands, in his legs, in his heart. Every day he learned more, and with each new lesson, became more connected to the world around him. But despite his progress, Ethan couldn't shake the fear that still clung to him. He was learning to harness power he didn't fully understand, and he knew that the Zareth were getting closer. Time was running out. One evening, as they returned to the cabin where Lyra was staying, she turned to Ethan, her face serious. "You're ready," she said softly. "The time has come for us to leave this place. The Zareth will be coming soon, and we need to find the resistance." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't feel fully ready, but he knew there was no more time to waste. The world was changing, and he had to change with it. Together, they set out into the night, leaving behind the life Ethan had known. There was no turning back now. The world was changing. Ethan could feel it in the air. It had been 2 weeks since he began training with Lyra. The simple life he once knew now felt like a distant memory. Every day, his power grew stronger. Every night, he felt a little more connected to the strange energy that Lyra had shown him, the energy that coursed through everything. But despite the progress, a quiet fear always lingered. The Zareth, the aliens who had infiltrated Earth, were out there. They were waiting, watching, ready to strike. Ethan had hoped they'd have more time, that he could learn more, become stronger. But deep down, he knew that time was running out. Lyra's warnings had grown more urgent, and every passing day seemed to bring them closer to a confrontation they weren't ready for. It was a cold evening when everything changed. Ethan and Lyra were walking along a quiet road just outside of Brooksville. The stars above them were barely visible, hidden behind a thin veil of clouds. It was a peaceful night, but the tension in the air felt heavier than it should have been. "Something's wrong," Lyra muttered under her breath, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Ethan glanced around, trying to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something about the night didn't feel right. He stopped walking and turned to Lyra. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I can sense them. They're close." Ethan's heart raced, his breath catching in his throat. He had heard Lyra talk about the Zareth, but this was different. This time he could feel it too. It was as if the air itself had thickened, making it harder to breathe. His skin tingled, a sharp sensation running up his arms, as if something unseen was watching them. "Where?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "They're everywhere," she replied, her voice low and tense. "But there's one nearby. I can feel it. Stay close, Ethan." Ethan nodded, instinctively standing closer to Lyra. He had learned to trust her. But in that moment, a part of him wasn't sure if he was ready for what was coming. They had been preparing for the war, but no amount of training could fully prepare him for the feeling of danger hanging over them like a storm cloud. Suddenly, the quiet of the night was broken by the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and fast approaching. Ethan froze, his heart hammering in his chest. He didn't need to ask who it was. He knew. Lyra stepped forward, her body tense as she surveyed the path ahead. "Get ready," she whispered. From the darkness emerged a man-tall figure, dressed in a black jacket and jeans, his face hidden by the shadows. He moved toward them with a calm, unnerving pace, his steps perfectly measured. There was something off about him, something that didn't sit right with Ethan. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking slightly. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stopped just a few feet away, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Lyra. "Lyra," the man said, his voice smooth and cold. "I knew I would find you eventually. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Lyra didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on the man with a mix of recognition and anger. "What do you want, Zareth?" The man's lips curled into a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "I want what's mine. The power you've been hiding, the power that belongs to the Zareth, and I will not leave without it." Ethan took a step back, his heart pounding faster. He didn't understand everything that was happening, but he could feel it. This wasn't a normal encounter. This was the beginning of something bigger, battle he wasn't ready for. Lyra's eyes flashed, her stance shifting. "You don't know what you're dealing with," she warned. "If you want to take it, you'll have to fight me." The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "I don't need to fight you, Lyra. You know that. You were never a match for us. You were always too soft." Lyra's hand moved slowly to her side, where a hidden blade rested. Ethan didn't know what it was, but he could feel the power radiating from it. It wasn't just a weapon. It was part of Lyra herself, symbol of her strength. The man took a step forward, his form shifting slightly as he began to transform. Ethan watched in disbelief as the man's body began to stretch and twist, his features melting into something entirely different. His skin became pale and slick, and his eyes turned a deep, dark shade of red. The shape-shifting was quick and unsettling, and Ethan could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as the man transformed into something far less human. "A Zareth," Lyra whispered, as if speaking to herself. "This is what they've become." The creature before them was tall and horrifying, with jagged features and a form that seemed almost translucent. It wasn't just the shape that was different, it was the energy it gave off. It was cold and empty, like it didn't belong to this world. Ethan took a step back, feeling a wave of nausea hit him. He had never seen anything like this before. The sight of the creature sent a shiver down his spine. Lyra's voice broke through his panic. "Ethan, focus. This is why you've been training. You can do this. You have to fight back." Ethan's mind raced. Fight. He wasn't ready for this. He didn't know how to fight something like that. But as he looked at Lyra, her eyes full of determination, her body ready for the battle, he knew there was no choice. He had to do something. Taking a deep breath, Ethan reached deep inside himself, trying to tap into the power that Lyra had been helping him unlock. At first, nothing happened. His heart raced, his body trembling. But then, like a spark in the darkness, he felt it. A small, flickering connection to the energy around him. The world seemed to slow down as his senses sharpened. The Zaroth creature advanced, its eyes narrowing as it focused on Ethan. Lyra stepped forward, ready to strike, but before she could move, Ethan felt a rush of power course through him. Without thinking, his hands moved toward the creature. He didn't know what he was doing, but something inside him told him to trust it. Suddenly, a burst of energy shot out from his palms, hitting the creature square in the chest. The force of it pushed the Zaroth backward, causing it to stumble. For a moment, everything was still. Ethan's breath came in sharp gasps, and his mind was spinning. He had done it. He had actually done something. But he didn't have time to process it. The Zereth creature quickly recovered, its red eyes burning with fury. Impressive, hissed, its voice twisted and cold. But it won't save you. Lyra's eyes flashed with pride. You're stronger than you realize, Ethan. Keep going. Ethan nodded, trying to steady his breathing. The creature was moving toward him again, its form shifting with every step. It wasn't going to stop until it had them. But now, Ethan knew something he hadn't before. He had power. It was still new, still wild, but it was his. The battle was just beginning, and Ethan was ready to fight. The night was thick with tension as Ethan and Lyra made their way through the forest, their feet crunching on the fallen leaves beneath them. The encounter with the Zarath had shaken Ethan to his core, but it had also awakened something deep inside him. He had felt the power surge through him, the raw energy that he never knew he had. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Lyra had been quiet since the battle, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Ethan knew she was on edge, just as he was. The Zarath they had faced wasn't the only one out there. It was just the beginning, and now they had to move quickly. The Resistance, the group of human survivors who had been fighting the Zarath for years, was their only hope. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, Ethan muttered, keeping his voice low as they walked. Lyra glanced at him, her expression calm but serious. No one is truly ready for war, Ethan, but you're stronger than you think. And you're not alone. You've got me, and you've got the Resistance. Ethan nodded, but doubt still lingered in his chest. He had always been an ordinary guy. Now he was expected to fight an alien army to protect Earth from an invasion that had been centuries in the making. It seemed impossible. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized there was no turning back. The Zarath had already begun their plan. The world was changing, and it was up to people like him to stop it. As they continued their journey, the forest around them grew darker. The air was heavy, and the silence seemed unnatural. The only sounds were the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Lyra stopped suddenly, holding up her hand to signal Ethan to stay quiet. Her eyes flicked to the shadows ahead of them. Someone's coming, she whispered. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know if it was the Zarath or someone else. But either way, he wasn't sure he was ready for another fight. His body still ached from the battle earlier, and his mind was still trying to process everything he had learned in the past few days. We need to be careful, Lyra warned, her voice low. Stay behind me, Ethan nodded, though his nerves were on edge. He had never been in a situation like this before. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for combat. But here he was, walking through the woods, facing down alien invaders with nothing but his instincts and the power Lyra had awakened in him. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and soon a figure emerged from the trees ahead of them. It was a man, tall and wearing a hooded cloak, his face hidden in the shadows. He moved with a quiet confidence, like he had done this many times before. Lyra didn't flinch. But she didn't lower her guard either. She stepped forward, her voice steady. Who are you? The man paused for a moment, then lifted his hood, revealing a rugged face with dark, tired eyes. I could ask the same of you, he replied, his tone wary but not hostile. But I think we both know why we're here. Ethan took a step back, keeping his eyes on the stranger. He didn't know whether to trust him or not. But Lyra didn't seem threatened, so he chose to wait. I'm Marcus, the man said, his eyes shifting between Ethan and Lyra. I've been tracking the Zarath for years, and it looks like we're on the same side. Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. You're from the Resistance, then? Marcus gave a short, grim nod. I am, and I've been trying to find you. The Zarath are moving faster than we anticipated. We don't have much time. Ethan's stomach tightened. What do you mean? What are they planning? They're not just invading Earth, Marcus said, his voice dark. They're preparing to take over, and they've found a way to make humans their puppets. The invasion has already begun, but they have a bigger plan. They want to erase the minds of every human on this planet, turning them into mindless soldiers. And once that's done, they'll control everything. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had known that the Zeroth were dangerous, but this was worse than he could have imagined. To erase the minds of humanity? To turn everyone into puppets? It was unimaginable. And it was happening right now. What can we do? Ethan asked, his voice urgent. How do we stop them? Marcus looked at him, his gaze hardening. That's where you come in. Ethan blinked. Me. Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. You've already begun to tap into your power, Ethan. But you need more. You need to understand what you're capable of. And that's why we're here. Marcus nodded. The Resistance has found a way to help you unlock your full potential. But it's not going to be easy. There are risks involved. Ethan swallowed hard. He had no idea what they were asking of him. He had barely begun to understand his abilities, and now they were telling him to unlock even more? The thought of facing the full power of the Zeroth seemed impossible. But deep down, he knew that he had no choice. I'll do it, he said, surprising even himself. I have to. Marcus gave him a brief nod. Good. We don't have much time. Follow me. The three of them moved quickly through the forest, heading toward the hidden base where the Resistance was gathering. The air seemed to grow colder as they walked, the weight of the task ahead of them pressing down on Ethan's shoulders. He could feel the power building inside him, like a storm waiting to break free. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. As they reached the edge of the forest, they came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an old, abandoned building, its windows shattered and its walls covered in vines. It looked like a place that had been forgotten by time. But Ethan could sense something else, the same energy that he had felt before. It was here, waiting for him. This is it, Lyra said, her voice low. Inside, you'll begin your training. But be prepared. The power you're about to awaken will not be easy to control. It's not just about strength. It's about balance. If you lose control, you could destroy everything around you. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. The moment he had been preparing for. But even as he stepped toward the building, a part of him was afraid. Afraid of what he might find. Afraid of what he might become. Inside, the building was dark and cold. The walls were lined with strange symbols, markings that Ethan couldn't understand. But as he stepped further into the room, he felt it again, the pull of the energy. It was stronger now, and he could feel it calling to him. Lyra and Marcus stepped back, giving him space. Focus, Lyra said, her voice steady. This is your moment, Ethan. Let the energy in. Trust yourself. Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He could feel the power within him like a fire burning just beneath the surface. He reached out, focusing all of his energy on the sensation. It was overwhelming at first, too much to handle, but then something inside him shifted. The power surged through him, filling every fiber of his being. It was like nothing he had ever felt before. It wasn't just physical strength. It was everything, every thought, every feeling, every connection to the world around him. It was all part of him now. His eyes snapped open, and for the first time, he truly understood. This was his power. This was what he was meant to do. The world around him seemed to shift, the air crackling with energy. He could feel the presence of the Zeroth even now, lurking in the shadows. But now, he was ready. Ready to fight back? Ethan stood at the edge of the ruined city, his body humming with the energy coursing through him. The wind tugged at his clothes, the chill of the early morning air sharp against his skin. But he hardly noticed it. His focus was on the distant horizon, where the dark shapes of the Zeroth forces were assembling. The battle was coming. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about victory. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and Ethan knew that this was the moment he had been training for. Beside him, Lyra and Marcus were preparing, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The Resistance was gathering in secret, hidden in the ruins of the old city. It was the last stronghold of human resistance. And it would be the place where the final confrontation took place. Ethan took a deep breath. He could feel the power within him, stronger than ever before. It was like a fire burning inside, ready to explode. He had learned to control it, to harness it. But he knew that using it in the coming battle would be different. There was no turning back. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, his voice steady but with a hint of concern in it. Ethan nodded, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "I have to be. We don't have a choice." Lyra turned to him, her eyes soft but serious. "You've come far, Ethan. You're stronger than you think. Trust yourself. This is your moment." The words felt heavy, and for a brief moment, doubt crept into his mind. What if he wasn't ready? What if all of this training, all the sacrifices, had been for nothing? But then, he remembered the faces of the people he was fighting for. He remembered the peaceful life he had once taken for granted. The life he was now determined to protect. "I won't let them win," he whispered to himself. "We're going to win this." Lyra smiled at him. "That's the spirit. Now let's get to work." They moved quickly, making their way through the ruined buildings that made up the city's old streets. The resistance had set up defenses, barricades, and traps, but it wasn't enough to stop the alien forces. The Zaroth had the advantage of numbers, and their soldiers were not only strong but deadly. The final battle would take everything they had. As they approached the heart of the city, where the main resistance base was located, the ground began to shake. A low, rumbling noise filled the air, and Ethan felt the vibrations beneath his feet. The Zaroth were coming. They were here. Get ready. Lyra shouted, her voice carrying through the chaos. This is it. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as the first of the Zaroth soldiers appeared on the horizon. They were marching in perfect formation, their black armor gleaming in the pale light. There were hundreds of them, more than Ethan had ever seen. And behind them, large ships hovered in the sky, their engines humming as they prepared for the invasion. Ethan took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. He could feel the power surging inside him, ready to be unleashed. But as he stood there, facing the enemy, he realized that it wasn't just about fighting. It was about hope. It was about humanity's will to survive. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes full of determination. "We fight for Earth, Ethan. We fight for every person, every family, every dream they have." He nodded. "I won't let them take it. I'll do whatever it takes." Without another word, Lyra led the way, and the resistance moved into position, ready to strike. Ethan stayed close to her, his mind racing with strategies, plans, and the flicker of doubt that refused to leave him. The Zaroth were ruthless, and they weren't going to hold back as they prepared to fight. A loud explosion echoed through the city. The ground trembled, and dust filled the air as a massive Zaroth warship descended from the sky. The ship's engines whined as it landed, its enormous size blocking out the sun. The soldiers began to spread out, and the first wave of the enemy advanced toward the resistance. Ethan didn't hesitate. He reached for the power within him and let it surge. The air around him crackled with energy as he focused on the approaching Zaroth soldiers. He raised his hands and a wave of force shot forward. Knocking the first group of aliens off their feet, the resistance cheered, but Ethan didn't have time to celebrate. The enemy was vast, and this was only the beginning. Lyra fought alongside him, her blade flashing in the sunlight as she moved like a blur, cutting through the enemy ranks. Marcus and the others were right behind them, using the knowledge they had gathered over the years to outsmart and outmaneuver the invaders. But despite their best efforts, the Zaroth kept coming. They were relentless, and their numbers seemed endless. Ethan gritted his teeth and focused harder. He could feel the energy building inside him, threatening to overflow. He couldn't hold back now. He raised both hands high above his head, and with a yell, he unleashed everything he had. A massive shockwave of energy erupted from his body, tearing through the battlefield. The ground cracked open, and several Zaroth soldiers were sent flying backward, their bodies slamming into nearby buildings. The energy surged outward, scattering the invaders like leaves in the wind. For a moment, there was silence. Ethan stood there, breathing heavily, his body trembling from the sheer force of the attack. He had never done anything like that before. The power was overwhelming, and yet, for the first time, he felt like he was in control. But the silence didn't last. The Zaroth quickly regrouped, and more soldiers continued to pour into the city. The battle raged on, louder and more chaotic than before. The air was thick with smoke, the ground shaking with every explosion. "We need to end this," Lyra shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "Ethan, we have to stop their commander. He's the key." Ethan nodded, understanding what she meant. The Zarath had a leader, someone powerful, someone who was directing the invasion. If they could take down the commander, they could disrupt the entire army. Lyra turned to Marcus. "You know where he is?" Marcus nodded. "He's in the command center, just ahead. We'll need to move fast." The three of them moved quickly, cutting through the enemy forces as they went. Ethan used his power to blast through any soldiers that got in their way. While Lyra and Marcus fought with skill and precision, they knew this was their only chance. If they didn't take down the commander now, the Zarath would overwhelm them. As they reached the command center, they found the commander waiting for them. He was taller than the others, his red eyes glowing with malice. His armor was dark and intricate, and he stood with a calm, intimidating presence. "You're too late," the commander sneered, his voice cold. "This world is already ours." Lyra stepped forward, her blade gleaming in the light. "Not if we can help it." The battle that followed was fierce. The commander was strong, more powerful than any of the other Zarath they had faced. But Ethan didn't hesitate. He focused all his energy on him, calling upon the power that had been growing inside him. The battle was long and brutal. But in the end, it was Ethan who struck the final blow. With a burst of energy, he sent the commander flying, knocking him to the ground. The Zarath forces faltered, and the remaining soldiers began to retreat. The battle was over. Ethan stood panting, his body exhausted from the fight. But as he looked around at the resistance, the survivors, the people who had fought beside him, he knew they had won. They had done it. Lyra stepped beside him, her eyes soft with pride. "You did it, Ethan. You saved us all." Ethan smiled, though it was a tired smile. "We did it," he corrected. "Together." The war wasn't over, but the first victory had been won. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan believed that humanity had a chance. Captain Riker Donovan stood at the edge of the moon's barren surface, staring up at the vast expanse of stars. The moon was silent, its jagged rocks casting long shadows beneath the dim light of distant suns. It was a perfect hiding spot for a rebellion, but Riker knew the silence wouldn't last. He could feel it in the air, the calm before the storm. "We've got our orders, Captain," Lieutenant Mara Jensen said as she approached, her voice low but firm. She was tall, with short-cropped blonde hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. Mara was one of Riker's most trusted officers, always sharp, always ready for the next challenge. Riker turned to face her, his brown eyes shadowed with fatigue. "I know, Mara, but what if we're wrong? What if we're just a small spark in a galaxy that's already burning?" Mara shrugged, her expression resolute. "Then we burn bright, together." Riker smiled, though it was a grim smile. He admired Mara's unwavering belief in their mission, but the weight of leadership bore heavily on him. The war had been going on for years. The Zarathian Empire, a vast and technologically advanced reptilian race, had swept through dozens of star systems, crushing all who dared stand in their way. Humanity had barely survived the initial onslaught. They were supposed to be insignificant, easy to ignore, but the humans had a surprising trait that no one, not even the Zarathians, had accounted for. They were relentless. The human spirit could not be broken, no matter how many times it was bent. Riker had seen it firsthand, how humans faced with extinction fought not just for survival, but for something more. Freedom. "Have the others reported in?" Riker asked, his voice returning to its usual calm, controlled tone. "Yes, sir," Mara replied. "The team is ready. They're already making their way to the extraction point. We have a window of 2 hours before the Zarathian patrols find us." Riker nodded, his mind already shifting gears. "Then we move." Now. The team quickly assembled in the base's operations room. Riker glanced over at the tactical display, where an image of the Zarathian capital, Vecta Prime, flickered on the screen. The planet was a jewel in the crown of the Zarathian Empire, thriving metropolis full of towering spires, endless cities, and state-of-the-art military installations. It was the center of everything the Zarathians controlled, and it was their next target. The humans had intercepted a transmission from the heart of the Empire. It was an encrypted message, but after months of decoding, they had discovered the terrible truth. The Zarathians were about to deploy a new weapon. A weapon so powerful that it could wipe out entire worlds in a matter of minutes. Riker knew that if the Zarathians succeeded in activating this weapon, humanity's fight would be over. There would be no resistance left, but Riker was determined to stop them. It had become personal. The lives of his family, his friends, and every human who had ever suffered under the Zarathian boot were now tied to this mission. Failure was not an option. "All systems are go, Captain," Sergeant Daniel Hayes reported, his voice steady as he reviewed the mission parameters on his screen. "The shuttle is ready for launch." Riker stood tall, looking at each member of his crew. They were a mix of soldiers and civilians, each with their own reasons for joining the resistance. Some had lost family, others had lost homes, but all of them shared the same goal: to stop the Zarathians from crushing humanity's future. "All right, listen up," Riker said, his voice booming in the small room. "This isn't just a mission anymore. It's a statement. We're going to Vecta Prime, and we're going to make sure that weapon never sees the light of day. Stay sharp. Trust each other. And most importantly, don't let anything distract you from the goal." There were nods around the room. Riker felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. There was no turning back. The shuttle's engines hummed to life as it lifted off from the moon's surface. Riker stared out the window, watching the barren landscape shrink below them. For a moment, he allowed himself to think about what they were leaving behind the rebellion's base. The families, the friends they'd lost. But it was only for a moment. The mission came first, always. The stars stretched out ahead of them as they entered the cold void of space. Vecta Prime wasn't too far. Riker's mind raced as he thought about the mission's next steps. They'd land in a remote section of the planet, outside the capital, and make their way in through a series of underground tunnels. From there, they would infiltrate the Zarathian Central Command and disable the weapon. Easy, in theory. But Riker knew that the Zarathians weren't the type to let things go without a fight. "You know," Mara said, her voice cutting through Riker's thoughts, "I've been wondering, how do you think the Zarathians view us? They must think we're just insignificant." Riker turned to face her, raising an eyebrow. "You think so?" She shrugged. "I mean, they have the power to destroy entire worlds. They've already conquered so much. Why would they even consider humans a threat?" Riker chuckled darkly. "Because, Mara, they've never fought anyone like us. Humans don't back down. We don't give up. And we're damned good at making the impossible happen." Horace smiled faintly. "I like that. Makes me think maybe we have a chance after all." The shuttle pierced through the upper atmosphere of Vecta Prime, and the team prepared for landing. The city sprawled beneath them like a labyrinth of metallic towers and neon lights. It was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The Resistance had scouted the area beforehand, but something didn't feel right. Riker's instincts were on high alert. "Touchdown in 3 minutes," Sergeant Hayes called out, his eyes scanning the cityscape on his console. "Everyone ready?" The crew nodded. Their faces were a mix of resolve and anxiety, but no one showed fear. Not yet. As the shuttle touched down in a hidden alcove beneath an overpass, Riker could hear the sound of distant Ingen-Surtheran patrols. They had made it this far, but the real test was just beginning. They had to move fast. "Stay close," Riker ordered, grabbing his rifle. "Mara, take point. Hayes, cover R6. The rest of you, keep your eyes open and your weapons ready." The team disembarked swiftly, moving in a well-practiced formation. The shadows of the city swallowed them as they made their way toward the underground entrance. Riker's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind remained sharp. There was no room for hesitation. Every decision, every step had to be perfect. But as they approached the tunnel entrance, something caught Riker's eye movement in the distance. A group of Zarathian soldiers patrolled the area, their armored bodies casting long shadows in the dim city lights. Riker's grip tightened on his rifle. This was it. The battle had begun.